Fantastic. Everyone can hear me, right? Yes. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to be giving a little talk about DevOps, which is kind of my favorite thing to talk about, and how it can be useful to you, whether you have heard of it or not. How many people have heard the term DevOps before reading the meetup title? Okay. How many people feel like they have a really good idea of what it is and what it's about? Cool, okay. So I still have something to talk about. Good, this is good. So myself, I am Steve Pereira. I'm the CTO of Statflo. I've also, back when I used to work for, actually after I worked at Wave, I built something called the DevOps checklist. You can have a look at that if you're interested in a way of sort of measuring what you know and what you have in terms of a mature DevOps practice in your organization or personally, however you want to frame it. And I also run a meetup called DevOps Toronto, and I run the annual DevOps Days conference here every spring. So really, around DevOps, it's a very large term, right? It's kind of nebulous and confusing. A lot of people have different assumptions about what it means. A lot of people think that it just means automation, and they're not wrong that that's part of it, but it's really not the entirety of what DevOps means. And I kind of want to talk about automation as part of a larger holistic title around, what is it and how does it really benefit people? So the origins really come from back in the day when developers got really productive because they had things like Agile, they had virtualized environments. It was easy to sort of put code onto servers and get it live into the world. But it was very, very difficult after you build it to keep it running and keep it operationally sound and scale it up and all those things. And that was sort of like thrust onto the ops staff of the company. It was like, I built this thing, make sure it doesn't break, it's all you now. And it was kind of thrown over the wall at the ops team and said, it's now your problem. I'm going to send you more stuff, but like, don't tell me about this, it's already done. It's like out of my hands. So when it would fall over, or it would burn up a database server, or cause all kinds of problems, there was this animosity between these two sides. And so DevOps is kind of the culmination of unifying those two teams and bringing them together by having a common language and a common set of initiatives to bridge the gap and bring them all into the same fold of saying, here's what we're going to do together, and it's a process and a set of practices and ideals that unify those two roles so that everyone is happy and everyone feels like they're not dealing with someone else's mess or restricted by someone else, because the developer side is like, well, the ops people, they don't let us do anything. They don't want us to change anything ever, and how are we supposed to get our work done, right? There's a bunch of back and forth, but really looking at life cycle and how we do things iteratively and saying, releasing code is something that we just have to do all the time. There's no option. You can't say to the business, we're just, we can't do it. Sorry, it's too difficult, right? So if you look at the best case scenario where you're just doing this all the time and you're constantly learning and you're constantly releasing software, what does that look like? So automation is a big part of it, but all these pieces sort of come together to build this cycle where you're trying to do it as quickly as possible, because it means you learn fast and you get ahead of your competition. So it kind of starts with this idea of collaboration of dev people, ops people, business people, security people, product people, all coming together and being informed from a very early state. Here's what we're all going to do. Here's all the pieces involved. Developing kind of an understanding and a common language where you can appreciate what the ops people are doing, you can appreciate what the business people are doing, because we have this common tool set and common process, right? And the automation, so that's a robot. But my emoji doesn't work, clearly. This is going to be super entertaining. Bear with me. But if you look at, the stupid animated GIF of the automatic toilet paper, really, you can automate whatever you want, but knowing what to automate and knowing that what you're automating is the most valuable thing, that's where DevOps really adds the value. It's making sure that you have dialogue all the way through your process and having everyone working on the same things together so that when it comes to automation, you're not just automating your own little thing and the whole rest of the process suffers. You're really looking at things holistically and saying, okay, as a team, as dev people, as ops people, what can we automate that's the most important thing that's going to get us the most value? So, chat ops, I'm going to guide you through this. This is super abstract. I do sort of remember, this is people, that's talking and communication, this is the robot again, and this is the cloud. Like, you sort of get it, obviously. It's like, just thinking abstract. But really, if you're looking at how to effectively automate things, you have to do it collaboratively, right? You have to be not just firing stuff off to other people and saying, I'm doing my job super quickly, why can't you keep up? Or why does this fall apart when it gets to you? So looking at things collaboratively as teams really helps that happen with the best result. So parts of this that are really, really important are testing, deployment, and infrastructure, where if you want to automate all this stuff, you can't have someone plugging in servers anymore, right? Like if we look at scale and we look at where we want to bring things, you can't be adding new hardware. It's where the cloud becomes very valuable. You can't be manually testing things because you have to do it all the time now. So automation really helps you cover these things and make sure that you don't have to worry about them anymore and you can focus on your development or whatever is valuable to you. But really, DevOps can also deal with how do you do logging in a scalable way? How do you monitor everything so that you don't have to be looking at it constantly? And you can just rely on a system to send you a page or a text message in 2018 when something's breaking or something's not doing what you expect. And a lot of these things are improved by automation, but you have to sort of know what's involved in order to really optimize them. And underlying all of this, you can have the best intentions in automating everything that you want, but the human side of it is the most important. It's the thing that really will make or break anything that you try and do here. So I can't emphasize that enough. Is try to investigate the effects of empathy, burnout, high trust environments, because when you're working with different roles and different capacities, all the human stuff is really what gets in the way. And DevOps has come a long way in kind of bringing that to the forefront, and things like advocating for postmortems and looking at who's actually doing manual tasks in a process and who's a single bottleneck, who's the only person who knows about a certain thing. All these things can make the best automation fall apart because they're the things at the edges. So really at a high level, if I were to summarize, it's kind of agility, collaboration, automation, and humanity are the key ingredients here. And there's a bunch of different acronyms that people will use. But really it comes down to these core fundamental ideas. And you can layer in any kind of tooling that you want, but these things are universal, right? You could be using Kubernetes, you could be using AWS, you could be using Vagrant, any programming language you want. All those things are very specific and they differ by situation, right? So I'm not going to stand up and recommend everyone should be using Kubernetes because not everyone should, right? And specific tools really don't matter. It's the principles that matter most. So really, like, how do you get off the ground with any of this stuff? If you want to go back to work and kind of implement something that will be high value, what would I give you leaving here as something of value? My favorite thing to tell people about is a concept called value stream mapping. Can I get a show of hands for how many people have heard of value stream mapping before? Cool, okay, good. So value stream mapping kind of comes from old school manufacturing. So you would have a raw materials on this side, and you would have a product on this side. So let's say you have steel and you have a car. What are all the steps that go into making the thing that you're trying to make? And if you go back to the idea of DevOps, that cycle, it plays really well into manufacturing, but we're kind of beyond that now because you no longer have the constraints of like a physical factory. You're fanning out and fanning in different pieces, and a lot of them are very agile and scalable. So manufacturing is kind of where this comes from, but now we're looking at 2018 and beyond is look at a process. Let's say your software delivery process, for one. Code goes in, people using the system in production are on the other side. And there's probably very, very few people in your business that know every single step. And then these delays are really what kill us, because if you have a week here, anything that you're doing to optimize here or here, like a lot of people spend a lot of time tweaking their deploy process, which is great. But bringing this down from 15 minutes to 10 minutes is not as big a deal as bringing this down from a week to 5 days, right? And a lot of people will miss this because, read an article and it talks about, optimizing your deploy process, or it talks about how Amazon is deploying 1 million times a day, and you get a little, excited about the one thing that you can do in that space. But I would encourage everyone to sort of go back and say, okay, well, this thing that we do all the time, if I don't understand it, can I find someone who understands it? And then if nobody really understands it, try and do an exercise like this. You can do it on your own, but it can serve as a really good way of communicating with the rest of your team and saying, can we all agree that this is a problem, this week here is a problem? And then everyone sort of gets bought into actually improving something that everyone can agree on. So that's really, I wanted to keep it really quick and leave you guys with one thing. That's my one thing. I'm happy to answer questions if there's time. But this is my email, if anyone can see it. I don't know if it's blocked by everything. But I'm also in the Tech Masters chat, and I'm sure we'll share contact information, so I'm happy to take questions now if we have no time offline at the event or afterwards. Thanks very much. I should keep this. I'm going to keep this on for the questions. Riley.
Yeah, thoughts on how DevOps gets involved in dozens and dozens get involved in architectural decisions, sort of like downstream effects. What are your thoughts on that, and how does you approach that?
Sure. So the question was around how DevOps affects architecture decisions and let's say optimizing or mitigating downstream effects of decisions made upstream, right? So if we make a decision in development to use a specific technology, this happens all the time, where your devs want to use MongoDB, right? And your ops staff are like, hell no, I'll quit. Really, it's really all about collaboration at that point to have those meetings early on, or ideally you have chat ops where people are sitting in Slack all day, and that idea comes up and it's discussed. But really, what I've seen success with is in every company that I go into to advise these days is having a formal RFC process. However lightweight it is, RFC being request for comment, but just making sure that people think through and describe and communicate what they want to do, and then share it with everyone and say, we want to do this thing, what do you think about it? And having, that opportunity to say, I'm sensitive to the way you might be impacted by this thing that I want to do. What are your concerns or thoughts or ideas? Are you excited about it, or are you terrified? And the RFC process is like just a Google Doc with like 4 headings. Fill out as much as you can, but it might get kicked back to you if it's crappy. And then that's feedback that's valuable upstream, so that your downstream folks aren't thrown under the bus. Does that make sense?
In your opinion, is there a difference between DevOps and Google's SRE concept?
I would say that Google's, so the question was, is there a difference between DevOps and Google's SRE philosophy, site reliability engineering? SRE is like a position within a lot of organizations these days where they've learned that having DevOps as a title doesn't make any sense. And you can define things a lot tighter by saying, site reliability and focusing on scale and deployment and automation and stuff like that is really valuable because you're dealing in specifics. So I'm a big fan of SRE as a job title as part of like a holistic DevOps approach or methodology inside of a company. But I think it's super valuable to talk in specifics and target things in specifics, because you don't really get very far by saying, we need to DevOps everything. Like if you're saying, we need to be able to scale into the EU and APAC and not manage all of our servers by hand, that's a specific thing that an SRE can help you implement. But I find a lot of companies will fail trying to do more DevOps things because they don't specify things. And I think a sign of maturity is saying that SRE is a job title that we give responsibility for certain things to, but they should be part of like a larger DevOps, let's say cultural value system in the company.
So blockchain prides itself on being centralized, but when over 10% of transactions on Ethereum go through centralized services such as Pereira, and almost everyone runs their nodes on services such as Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Reserve, is the future of blockchain running on the corporate cloud?
Good question.
Yes.
So I meant to actually mention blockchain in my talk. Not because it's a blockchain talk, but because I want to tie it in with what Brian's talking about. But really, if you look at a value stream, you look at what a lot of people want to assign the blockchain to or use the blockchain for. Blockchains are great for making sure that what you expect out of a process is actually what you're getting, right? Like that your inputs and your outputs are valid. And so I think, a lot of blockchain work is kind of facilitated by thinking of things in value streams. Specifically to your point in how people want to manage their infrastructure and resources globally, we're moving to sort of more cloud agnosticism in that, it shouldn't matter whether you're hosted on AWS or Google or your own private cloud. There are things like containers and serverless functions that can help you sort of scale up and out through different environments. There's always going to be people who want to run things themselves in their own data centers. And so I don't think we're ever going to do away with that, but I think, everything that we can do with cryptography and encryption makes it a lot easier to scale to areas and environments that you don't own, where you can just be confident that what you're running in that space is what you expect and it behaves the way you expect, and you don't have to, you can kind of take it for granted, even if you don't run it entirely yourself. So I think we are moving to more decentralization in infrastructure, in development, in running code. And it's just been increasing over time. But definitely, I think blockchain can be part of making sure that that is safe and reliable in what we expect to get out of it. How many people expected me to give a blockchain talk? Next time we should just both be up on stage and just talk at the same time. Okay, all good? Thanks everybody.